Welcome to the Best Place to Work podcast, where we promise actionable tips from real business leaders on building amazing work cultures. Not tips from Google, but tips from the trenches of real-world businesses just like yours. Well, today on the podcast, we have a special episode. We don't sit down with a founder of a company today. Instead, we have Andy Bailey, who is a Petra coach. He works with a number of companies that transition from small to mid-sized to large, and he helps them navigate that transition in executive coaching and business strategy, that sort of thing. And so I'm really honored to have Andy on the show today to talk about his process and how hiring someone like himself can help your business and what that would actually include. So thanks for being on the show, Andy. I appreciate it.
Thanks, brother. Appreciate it much too.
So Andy, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into business coaching and how you work.
Sure. So I ran a wireless telecommunications company for 18 years from 1993 and sold it in 2011. And I ran it poorly for about half that time and then figured out that I needed to make some changes. And I stumbled upon a methodology called the Rockefeller habits. So implemented those processes into that organization over about, a 3-year period of time, and then completely changed me as a leader, which I think is fundamentally something that we have to do, and then changed, the way the organization ran. We were able to, grow gross margin by a ton and, really do some cool things and ultimately exit the business.
So then you tell me about then making the transition into coaching and how you took that and what do you do now with companies?
So I left the organization in late 2011-ish, something like that, and decided I was going to take a year, not make any big decisions. Spent 3 or 4 months of that time working with other companies, helping them implement those processes. And the intent was I would spend time with a bunch of entrepreneurs. This big light would shine out of the sky and show me what my next path should be. And I found myself just really enjoying helping people grow their companies and becoming better as human beings and as leaders and as operators and managers and all the things that it takes to kind of build this thing that we all want to build. So I decided to start a coaching practice. And I started with myself, and over a very short period of time decided it needed to be a coaching company. And now we have 6 or 7 coaches, along with coach coordinators. We're a team of about 13 people today. Work with 70-ish companies around North America, helping them implement systems and processes. We call it an operating system, so that they can maximize their day and maximize what they have inside of their organization.
Now, what kind of businesses are you typically working with, and what size frame, or is it all over the map?
We call our sweet spot this 15 to 125 employee base, like $5 to $50 million in revenue kind of companies. We have some that are smaller. We have some that have started with us that had, the founders at a card table in their kitchen, all the way up to, big multinational companies with thousands of employees. So they run the gamut. We like to work with companies where we can wrap our arms around the entire team. We're very much team focused and working with an entire organization, not just, a group of executives.
So when someone's actually coming to you, what would you say is the biggest pain that they have? So why are they reaching out to you specifically? And they just reach like the end of the rope and they pick up the phone and call you, or they Google search for a local coach. What is the biggest pain that they have when they call you?
It can be people, it can be process, it could be there's a lot of pains. The way we ask that question, and we want to really dig into this because it's one of our kind of key areas that we want to make sure that they have they have one of these 2 pains. And the way I always say it is you need to be incredibly frustrated, like frustrated to the point that you're sitting in the parking lot in your office and you're crying and you don't want to really go in there. You maybe even pull into your office and you turn around and drive around for a little while before you go back. Frustrated like that, right? I just don't know what to do next. Or you need to be fearful. And by fearful, I mean, you can see an opportunity, this thing could be something really big or different than it is today, but you also know you're not going to reach that summit with the way you're doing things today. Mm-hmm. So you're just fearful of not being able to fulfill what you know is the opportunity. So frustration or fear has to exist because that's the only thing that's going to lead to change. And many times it's systems, yes, it's processes, but it's people have to change. They have to view things differently. They have to act differently. It's a behavioral change process as much as it is anything else.
And what would you say are some of the doubts that people have before they're working with you? So they have this frustration point. They're like, okay, I need to do something. Maybe they're going to try to do it on their own to pick up the Rockefeller habits. I think I watched a video with you where you're talking about the process you go through and you're saying, hey, it's not rocket science and you know how to do these things, but I'm going to help you and I'm going to be your guide. And I think that me as a business owner, it's like, I know that having been burned by consultants in the past, but
sure.
when someone is going to work with you, what would you say is the biggest hurdle? They have the frustration, then what's the hurdle that they'd have to get over to actually, being so frustrated they call you?
There's probably a couple things. One of the most prevalent is they don't believe in themselves enough early on. So, a coach many times will believe in somebody before they believe in themselves. So that's a piece. And we see that a lot with companies. They think, well, we've been growing 15% a year. We can grow 15% a year, but they really want to grow 50%. And they just don't believe it can actually happen. And it can. We see it all the time. So that's a piece of it. We get a lot of pushback or a lot of questioning around, I got to get buy-in from my team. And I was up at MIT this week, and somebody said to me, as an entrepreneur, do you have an operator's mindset or an owner's mindset? If you think about that for a second, it's the same thing as, I got to get buy-in from my team. Do you have an operator's mindset or an owner's mindset? Whose company is it at the end of the day? Mm-hmm. Like if things went to hell in a handbasket, it's really you that's left. So it's a decision that you have to make, and you make that decision and you stand by it. You'll get buy-in from your team. Mm-hmm.
So you're saying they're operating on an operator's mindset,
correct?
Not an owner's mindset,
correct?
So they're kind of wanting to have kumbaya with everyone on the team, not saying we need to be committed to this strategy. Is that kind of what you're saying, or?
Yeah, that, and another statement I heard this week. I've been up there for 3 days, so I've got a lot of stuff rattling around in my head. He said, if you want to make everybody happy, don't become a leader. Sell ice cream.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by Waypoint. If you want to get your team aligned and you want to go from herding cats to a well-oiled machine, and if you're sick of the annual review process, then check out Waypoint. It's an elegant tool built for leaders just like you to help you invest in your people and unlock their true potential. Head over to waypointhq.com to learn more. So tell me a little bit about the clients you've worked with and maybe the light bulb moments that they have. That you mentioned one, which is the going from an operator's mindset to an owner's mindset, but particularly with maybe someone that, the E-Myth is a good book that I've read multiple times. And what that is really figuring out how to go from maybe someone that was good maybe at making one thing, like they say pies in the book, right? And then they say, okay, really you have to transition into being the owner and delegating out and making that transition. And that kind of in my mind is like, okay, what are all the light bulb moments that maybe you could shed light on to help someone that's maybe wanting to work with a coach like yourself, and they have these hurdles, and it's like, okay, I want a little bit of a taste of what Andy does, like some nuggets of knowledge, Well,
I wrote a book on this. It's called No Try, Only Do. It'll be on Amazon June the 2nd, and I'm happy to send you a PDF version of that so you can. There's case studies in there that speak directly to this question. A couple of them that are front of mind. The first is, and for me, this was very true. In my business, I was a dictator leader, meaning I held all the information. People had to come to me for every decision, and it ended up somebody had to hold a mirror up for me so I could see this. And that's what we do as coaches, is kind of hold a mirror up and like, look at you, what you're doing. And I had to realize that was a big hurdle for me. And the light bulb for me was my people were smart. Our team was people are smarter than we think they are. And if we'll truly delegate to them well, give them clear, guardrails so they don't crush somebody along the path, and clear expectations of outcomes, what it exactly is it that we want. And if we'll just get the hell out of the way, many times people will outperform what are, to our expectations. So that was really big for me. The other side of that is, at the same time, we have to be okay with people making small mistakes along that path, and not, running the car off the bridge. So you got to have those guardrails. But that's how we learned. We grew up as an entrepreneur, and I built this company and sold it, and made a ton of mistakes along the way. I still make mistakes, but I don't make the same ones I made 15, 25 years ago, where these guys are going to make those little mistakes, and they have to be able to learn from those. And allowing somebody to complete something to an 85%, so you can put 15% on top of it and make it awesome, as opposed to doing it all yourself or dictating it to a point that it becomes your product and not their product. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of, light bulby type things.
Talk about those guardrails a little bit and how you walk through with a company on how to do that, because I think that's the delegation piece and primarily the trust piece is another thing that came up in a lot of the conversations with companies you talk to, and they say that's one of the key differentiators of companies that have created a culture that is best place to work. They trust their employees. They give them room and autonomy to actually do their job. But I think that's hard for leaders. Not everyone necessarily would call themselves a dictator leader. Maybe they are, but I think they struggle maybe with those guardrails and saying, it's not so much I don't trust that person, it's that I don't really know how to build in that system that they can function to make those small mistakes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and from our work and what we do, we work with a business. We're going to set very, very clear. We call them initiatives. So, what are the 3 to 5 things that we have to get done 3 years from now, 1 year, 1 quarter? What are the priorities? And those become the guardrails. So, along with core values and core purpose and how we behave and kind of all these rules that we agree to play by. But getting clear, very, very clear on exactly what it looks like in an end state at whatever time, the time period that may be, whether it's 3 years or 5 years or 1 year or 1 quarter. From the leadership standpoint, if they can get really clear on that, then those become the guardrails. Mm-hmm. So as long as you can, let's say, I worked with a company a couple of years ago. We did an annual planning session, and the owner, prior to us coming in, the owner would just disrupt the entire day. Like they couldn't get anything done, and the COO came to me and said, "Will you just come, please help us facilitate this thing? It's off the rails, and we're not getting anything done." So the first thing I did was said, "Look, owner, you're going to get the first 15 minutes of the day, and then you have to leave. Like, you can't be in the room anymore. So in the first 15 minutes, I need you to tell these people what you want the year to look like." And he gave them 3 things. It was something to the effect of, this is where we want our revenue number to be. And at the same time, this is where we want our client satisfaction number to be. So those are kind of balancing metrics, because I could drive revenue and not perform, to the same standard. So he had some good balance metrics in there. And then he had some margin in there. He said, and we want to make this much money. So just by giving them those 3 guardrails, then we could take that and say, all right, how are we going to get this revenue? How are we going to generate this much margin doing it? And how are we going to make sure that we perform at a level that the customer number stays high? And we got a ton of work done that day without his interference in this particular case. So I think if an owner, an operator, an entrepreneur can get really, really clear on what they want and boil it down to just a few things instead of this god-awful mess that we often create, then people are smart enough to figure out how to get there.
Yeah. No, I think that's definitely key. How does someone go about engaging with you, Andy? Is it like is it like different levels that they can work with you, or is it, because I know how much do you have to bite off? You don't want to bite off more than you could chew, Talk to me a little bit about that.
So a couple things. We built a roadmap of implementation. So we usually talk to companies that will say, look, it's going to take you anywhere from 12 to 36 months to implement all of the stuff that we're going to talk through. And it covers everything from strategic planning to executing on what you say, to How do we hire? What are the questions you're going to ask in the interview process? What are your rewards and recognition systems? What are your compensation programs? So it covers a lot of ground in everything that we do, all aspects of the business. So it takes time. We're going to start with some more basic things. So quarter over quarter, new pieces get put in, and it's fairly systematic and structured. We do have different levels that people can engage, meaning if you want to go faster, we're going to put more time, energy, and effort into it. If it's okay if you go a little bit slower, we'll see you less often, and it'll take you a little bit more time. We do even have some group settings where people come together, different companies in a room, and do their planning together, which is kind of cool because you can bounce ideas and thoughts off of other company leaders at the same time.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys give in terms of I know one of the things as companies grow, they struggle with empowering their line managers because they start to grow and then they have to get tiers of management in there, and they struggle with when they promote maybe internally to get people into management, and they don't really have a good system for that. So they don't really have, maybe they get people in that don't have experience with management, but they know the product, they know the business. And do you guys speak to that in terms of empowering those managers to be good leaders? Is that wrapped up in exactly the same, system that you guys are using company wide, or?
Yeah, there's lots of training that goes along with what we do as well. We have a pretty core belief that if the people get better, the business gets better, and the business will never get better unless the people get better. So we have to grow them at the same time. We'll focus, it's going to sound a little odd, but we'll focus on their personal lives. What do they want to achieve personally? Lose weight, run faster, rekindle relationships, fix a family, whatever those things may be. Those are actually part of our planning process, because if they get better, then the company's going to get better. And sometimes it comes down to that leadership, like you're talking about. If somebody needs to understand people and how to communicate better, or how to do one-on-ones, or they're just not good at it. I'll put it this way: somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, should I get executive coaching, like one-on-one for themselves, or should they, work with us and what we do? Because we work with teams. And my answer was, we're going to work with your entire company, so your entire teams over the course of time, which will automatically get you one-on-one coaching. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get better, and all your people are going to get better because it's automatically going to include that. If you choose to take the other path, which I don't think is a bad thing, it's just different. One-on-one, you don't get that for your team. And what we notice in companies and even in our own personal lives, if the leadership team continues to get better and better, they get their own coaching, they get their own learning, they continue to read books, they watch videos and listen to podcasts, right? Mm-hmm. They get better, and their teams never do. There just gets to be this bigger gap. And then all of a sudden leadership is like, why can't they keep up?
Yeah.
Well, hell, you just outgrew them.
Yeah.
You didn't afford them the same opportunity. There was a statistic I read recently that said the average business spends, and I'll get the numbers off, but the impact will be the same, somewhere between $5,000 and $25,000 from a CEO perspective on learning, right? Per year, $5,000 to $25,000, 0 to 500 on team members.
Wow.
And then we as leaders look at our team and go, why are we outgrowing them? Why can't they keep up? Well, they're not spending any time, energy, or money on.
You're right.
So that's the way we look at that.
Yeah. No, I think that's important. I think, why do you think that is? Do you think they don't value it, or they just don't have a framework for it, or they're just saying, hey, it's a low priority, or not even on the map, or?
I think that it's very difficult for, a manager, a supervisor, a CEO, a leadership team, a C-level person to actually understand that they need to be the dumbest person in the room.
Yeah.
That they need to surround themselves with people that have skills that outweigh their skills. And that's what makes companies awesome.
Yeah.
They feel like they become inferior in that space when really they're not.
Yeah, I was talking to a CEO actually on this podcast, and he said he's took his whole career to learn how to say 3 words: I don't know. And he said, for so many years as a leader, you don't want to say that. But once you learn how to say that, you can, like you said, hire people smarter than you, but then have humility that opens up, I think, the opportunity for people to excel, which I think is really important. So
absolutely.
That's great. Anything else you wanted to add, Andy?
I think, when I was going through the process of implementing all this stuff, and I went through a program called Birthing a Giants, which is a 3-year MIT thing in conjunction with EO, Entrepreneurs Organization. And, I brought all this information back and implemented it myself. I didn't know that there was coaches available, or I would have found somebody to help me do it, more quickly. So those resources are out there. We can help anybody. We're happy to give them resources, answer a question. We have tons of stuff on our website that they can access for free. Just go get it, use it. We call it R&D, rip off and duplicate.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's great.
It's on there. Please go use it. As you mentioned earlier, I think our BHAG have a positive impact on 10 million human beings. So the more we can give it away, let's go make an impact.
That's great. Well, you can find Andy at petracoach.com, Petra coach.com. We'll also link up a lot of these resources in the show notes, so you'll be able to check those out at bestplacetoworkpodcast.com. Well, thank you so much, Andy. I appreciate you spending the time with us.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Talk to you later.
Talk to you later. Thanks so much for listening. If you found the show valuable, please give us some love on iTunes. But if there's any reason that you would rate us less than 5 stars, please let me know. Shoot me a note at mike@bestplacetoworkpodcast.com.